Despite Black working mothers being within the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, they remain largely underserved and underrepresented in the marketplace. No one has capitalized on their purchasing power or amplified their voices quite like Tika Sumpter and Ty Randolph. Thanks to their new venture, Sugaberry, a lifestyle brand created by and for modern moms of color, they're changing the narrative by diversifying the proverbial white space with a clear mission to cater, cultivate, and celebrate this vibrant community of mothers. Today, Sugaberry merges content, commerce, and community to create a destination for Black consumers. And it's a smart move. As influential consumers, mothers of color control the lion's share of the total Black spending power, which reaches around $1.5 trillion by the time it comes in 2023. And according to Forbes, these women not only influence what other Black generations and Black men spend their money on, but as early adopters of trends, Black women also influence the general population. So for this episode of WorkParty, I talked to Tika and Ty about their personalized content model, how they're catering to Black consumers at the intersection of career, motherhood, and personal development, and why it's crucial we amplify the perspectives and experiences of Black moms. So welcome, Tika and Ty.
Thank you for having us. We're so happy to be
excited.
So excited to be here. Been such a fan for such a long time and really excited to have this important conversation with you guys. So Tika, I'm going to throw it to you first. We talk about the proverbial white space, which was very clear 4 years ago when you were pregnant with your daughter. Can you take us back to that moment and how your frustrations at the lack of internet content and community about motherhood for women of color inspired you to start Sugaberry?
Yeah, I was pregnant with Ella 4 years ago, and I was looking for a space and community and content and commerce and just recommendations and people who were speaking to, motherhood, but also speaking to my experience. And I didn't understand why there wasn't a space dedicated to brown moms, Black moms, there was an array of white spaces, but they weren't, it was kind of like we were a second thought. It wasn't, it was kind of scattered in there, like sprinkled like a little bit of pepper. And then it was like, okay, that's enough. And I was like, I know I spend money. I know I have friends who spend money, but they weren't speaking to us. And so I called a friend and asked somebody, do they know someone who would be interested in just hearing the idea and seeing if it could work and all these things? And I was introduced to Ty. But yeah, I just saw a space where I wanted to be in, and I was pregnant, and I just felt like it wasn't speaking to me. And I was like, well, why isn't this done? Am I crazy? Maybe somebody tried to do it and it just didn't work out. And so I decided to jump into a co-founding business and partnership and figure it out.
Love that. So tell us a little bit about how you guys met each other. It sounds like you made a phone call. Ty, what's your background? Would love to know a little bit more about the partnership.
Absolutely. So, we were connected by a mutual friend of ours, Amber. And, I was a fan of Tika's for a while, have been watching her on TV forever. But one of the things I told our mutual friends was, oh, sure, I'll meet with her so I can explain to her why she should not go into this business. Having spent the majority of my career at the intersection of, content, consumers and culture, and understanding, sort of how much competition existed in the publishing space and how tough it can be to launch and scale a digital business. I said, hey, if you're going to do something that's ad supported, if it's, one more mommy blog, let me save you your time, right? Like I'll walk you through the business model, tell you all the challenges. And we got together at Soho House one afternoon, and, I went on with my business hat thinking I was going to give her this cautionary tale, but ended up feeling so compelled as a consumer, thinking, wow, I haven't heard about something that resonated so deeply with me as a mom, and was reflective of my own experience. I had, my son is a year younger than Tika's daughter. We both had our first child at the same age. And, it was very hard, as she described, to find any content, any community, any space carved out from a consumer product perspective that spoke to upwardly mobile, modern Black women. And I think the big differentiator for me was her emphasis on making it a tangible call to action. This wasn't just about content. It wasn't just another blog. The vision for Sugaberry was to, inspire this mom and her mini with content, but then empower them with products to live their sweetest lives. And the sweetness was what stood out because, she often says when she was pregnant, and the same was for me, when you Google Black motherhood, when you think about images of Black motherhood, it's so heavy, it's so weighty, right? We know there are definitely disparities when it comes to, healthcare outcome, sort of healthcare treatment and access, maternal outcomes, regardless of socioeconomic status. And those are issues that we tackle and head on. But where was the joy? Where was the light? And there was just this light that she described that I was immediately attracted to and wanted to be a part of.
I love it. I also love a cautionary founder coming in to be like, we should not do this. But I feel like that's probably a really good balance between the two of you, because it's like that practical hat, a little bit of negativity. Because I'm the same way. I always go in, I'm like, what could possibly go wrong? Like that's the vibe I bring to the table. But it's important. That's an important vibe.
Oh my God. It's one of the most, if anybody gets anything out of this, have somebody who balances your yang. Cause I'm like, we can do it all. We can do this. I have this idea. Creative. She's like, okay, money.
I mean, that's what makes a successful partnership. Honestly, I love it. So I threw in a bunch of stats at the beginning of the chat, 1.5 trillion in spending power. How are you guys using those numbers in your favor at Sugaberry, and in turn changing the narrative for Black consumers at the intersection of career, motherhood, and personal development? Because there's a lot of money on the table here as well.
Yeah. Kat, you want to take that one?
Absolutely. We talk about this. This was a real passion point. Like I said, we both resonated with it deeply from a personal perspective. But the more we got into the research, this wasn't, just an act of good. We thought that this audience is one that offers significant growth. It's one that we subscribe to. And it was just very bizarre that so much money was being left on the table. Like you said, the more research that we dug into, there were these real bright spots, right? Where, we talk about all the disproportionate stats when it comes to the negative, like I said, in the healthcare space and the wellness space and sort of, mental health treatment. But on the flip side of that, there are these other sort of disproportionate stats, which for us was a guiding light in getting into this business. When you look at, Black women making up 7% of the US population, but driving 40% of purchases when it comes to certain categories like baby food or, sort of packaged goods and juices. And we were saying, when you can really move a market in that way, when you look at even in the media and the content side, case studies like Red Table Talk, which literally revived an entire, product, Facebook Watch for a global platform. It was, wow, this audience moves market and we want to leverage and wield that power. So it's one of those things, I think we end up shaking hands with lots of folks who are interested because of the racial reckoning that's been happening across this year, of having a discussion and sort of have a will to listen and sort of all of a sudden pay attention, to Black women and Black consumers. But we're very quick to point out that this isn't about, altruism. This is about smart business and really catering to a smart and capable and influential consumer.
Absolutely. And you guys have created this personalized content strategy at Sugaberry that brings together content, commerce, and community to create this destination. So Tika, can you explain what this personalized format looks like and how it impacts the content types and platforms you're using to reach your customer?
Yeah, I mean, I think they all funnel into each other. We create content that, we're creating content that our audience and community actually cares about. And with that content, we're creating commerce out of that, funneling into the community to help them live their best lives. So we're bringing, it's like everybody, how I feel sometimes is like, people count on us, just like, whether it's the Democratic Party or Republican Party, whatever, they count on our vote all the time without feeding us. And so I'm like, well, then why can't we feed our own community, right? And why can't we cater? We know it. We're the women. We are them. And so why are we not feeding them? So it all comes out of content commerce community. So we always wanted, and eventually creating our own products, right? Because we're getting to know our community even more and what they need, right? We know the products. We wash our baby's hair. We use the products, right? And then growing that from there. But content feeds into commerce, which feeds into our community.
Absolutely. And you guys recently just launched a podcast on motherhood. So what can we expect in terms of conversations that we can see there?
Oh my gosh, I think it's one of our favorite things to do. We didn't mean for this to happen, but we launched the day before we got the stay-at-home orders, and we launched our company in general, and that included the sugar. And we talk about everything from IVF to how to speak to your kids about their bodies, and to sex, to love, to partnership, to wellness, to creating your space. It's just what we want to offer our community is the opportunity of joy through every realm of our verticals on our site, right? Because a lot of the times we're left out of the conversations. You don't see us on shows about weddings. You don't see us on shows about creating spaces and editing your home and all that stuff. And we're there. We are artists. We are space makers. We are wedding planners. Like, we're all these things, but a lot of the times we're kind of looked over. We're looked over on those vertical and platforms. So we wanted to not only bring joy, but we wanted to also bring real quality content about our bodies, about, we don't really talk about IVF enough. We don't really talk about different ways to motherhood, different pathways. If you want to be a motherhood, auntyhood, there's just so much that I think our own experiences talk about the things that the greater community wants to hear about. And we do that on the sugar.
Yeah, that's amazing and so important. To your point, representation matters. Seeing women in the interior design space, in the food space, whatever it might be, is so, so important. So you obviously are tapped into Black working mothers. What is the biggest topic that you think is on their mind right now? Obviously, this year has been rife with challenges. What is some of the content that is resonating with your audience today?
Kind of to piggyback on what, Tika was saying, there's a line in the film Queen and Slim, which kind of sticks out to me. And they're at the beginning, before everything goes left, they're at the diner and they're talking about, I think they were at the diner in the car. But anyway, he says to her, "Are you a good lawyer?" And she says, "Excellent." And he says, "Why do Black people always have to be excellent? Why can't we just be ourselves?" And it really stuck with me because it kind of speaks to the bar and expectation that exists when it comes to content and programming in any category when you're talking to Black consumers and you're centered on Black creators. There's this idea that it has to be so extraordinary, right? And that it's either so, laden with trauma or that the achievements have to be so exceptional. And I think, what has been resonating with our audience is the sweetness and the joy and the honesty about the interior lives of Black moms who are just mothering, right? So it's like, there's nothing, again, out of this world happening in our communities. Like the feedback that we get from the sugar, the feedback that we get from the site was, oh, you would have a whole conference about breastfeeding, right? Every other category of woman wants to. Why can't we talk about ourselves and our bodies and our relationships with our children without it being hypersexualized, right? We can have a whole conversation about how to bring joy to your space and make your home a haven. And there's no conversation about, how we, it's from the bottom and you come up story about, you're so thankful for a house. We're not saying that suffering does not exist in our communities. We're saying that our community deserves joy. And so as we think about, what's resonating, it's when honestly we can get on and we can talk about like, oh yeah, like it's hard to balance work and home life. It's how do you engage with your partner and your child and everyone together, and what products and experiences and services help enable that sweet life. I think the idea that someone would carve out and care so much for Black women and Black moms and just be totally centered on them, without any sensationalism, is what's really striking a chord.
Absolutely. And, starting a new media company is no small feat. So, Ty, what has been the biggest hurdle you guys have faced during the process, and how did you overcome it?
I mean, I think Tika alluded to it earlier. I mean, our biggest hurdle was really, when you are launching a new product or service of any kind, you want to be in the market with all of your constituents, with your consumers, with, the collaborators from a retail and consumer products perspective, with the advertisers who you hope to make content with and scale. And so the fact that we've literally been confined to our homes for the entire, 5 or 6 months now since we launched the business has been a unique challenge, right? Like, I can't think you can add all the things in about how difficult it is to start a business, how hard it is to scale, to build culture with a team who's just coming together, and to, strategize and all those things that are founder stories. And then you sprinkle a pandemic in the mix. But what I do think that the good thing that's come out of that, though, is it's made us truly digitally native, right? Like, a lot of times when you hear the term digitally native, you think of that as that's the way that you reach your consumers, but that's been our entire mode for collaboration. Any content we create, any conference we produce has all been remote. And so it's made us, I believe, agile and adaptable and sort of resourceful in a way that it might have taken longer to grow those skills otherwise.
Absolutely. And I'm sure for so many parents, from working from home has been a huge challenge, especially, if you have kids at home. So, how have you guys been dealing with that yourselves, let alone giving advice to your community and how to navigate that, kind of tricky new situation that a lot of people are finding themselves in?
A lot of wine. No, I'm kidding. But I'm not kidding.
Girl.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, calling on, each other, our friendships. Carving out time and space for you. I think a lot of people have reimagined their spaces, whether it's big or small, whether it's they're figuring out how to make a nook in a closet to kind of have their office space to separate their life space. And I think for me, it made me realize how many things I don't need, in life in general, whether it's physical or mentally, just the things that we stack up and running around and doing all these things that were cut out because they just had to be. But also you're like, do I really need to be running all over the place all the time, nonstop? And do I also need these bags and just different things? And everybody loves a bag and a shoe, yes. But do I need them as much as I thought I did? And do I want them? And do I want for me, I think it's more experiences. I've never driven all over town so much in my life and seen nature, and it's just the things that we can do with so much less, and really looking at the world around us and looking at people's eyes when you're taking a walk and saying hello and seeing people. And so for me, I've kind of created a space of seeing people and looking at my surroundings rather than just in my car and focused on only what I have to do and really connecting, I think that's what has, allowed me to make it thus far.
Absolutely. And obviously you guys launched during the pandemic. So how has some of your strategies shifted? Did you make big changes? Was there any pivots you had to make to adjust, or even in your further down the line strategy?
Yeah, one of the big things, so, our plan was to launch in March, and then over the summer, we were really going to be, sort of in the field with our communities, rolling out Sugaberry and the sugar to key markets. So we were going to have big experiences in Atlanta, DC, LA, Houston, New York. And so, that was off the table. There was no meeting in place. And so we had to reimagine what that looked like to really be able to connect. And, one of the initiatives that we're super proud of, we held in August during Black Breastfeeding Week, our first ever virtual summit called the Milk and Sugar Summit. And we had over 2,500 registrants commune to, stream in real time from all over the country, resources that would educate and empower and celebrate Black women and the breastfeeding experience. The photographer, Dwayne Rogers, Tika commissioned him to do this beautiful exhibit, which you can still find on sugaberry.com under Milk and Sugar, just celebrating and normalizing, Black women and their bodies and the breastfeeding experience. And the number of inbounds that we got after that, just saying that this was the first time that this space had been carved out for us, was really empowering. So it made us think differently about what community means in this new context of a pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, especially at Create and Cultivate, that we've been seeing, and it's interesting because I think what you guys are seeing in terms of content resonating is very similar to ours. There's this want and need for joy, and it's almost escapism, right? Because it's crazy right now. But then there's also the reality of what the pandemic has done, and it's really impacted women, but Black working mothers have been disproportionately affected by the increased burden of unpaid care, and their careers could take a massive long-term hit. A stat came out last week, and I'm going to blank on the number, but it was like over 800,000 women have left the workforce. Can you share some of your thoughts and stories from the Sugaberry community on how, this is affecting them, and what kind of support are you putting out there for Black mothers during this time?
Yeah. We're always trying to figure out ways in which we can help. And, even with just the Breonna Taylor situation that happened, and just the cataclysmic situation that's happening, we were part of, since the beginning of the pandemic, we went to Alexandria House, and Alexandria House is a home that basically houses a lot of women of color, and they get them on their feet, and they educate them, and they bring their families in. It's not just like you can stay, but your family has to go out. They house these women, and we were able to make an amazing a $10,000 donation to them, and also meet the families. We were also able to make another $10,000 donation to Color of Change to help our communities and in a bigger way. And so for us, it's all about community. How can we continue to give? And I think that's what we're doing. We're servicing Black women and allowing them to feel joy when all we do is literally, I feel like, carry the weight of this world on our backs. And I think that's a revolutionary act when we're able to create joy and self-care, because after a while, the mental prowess of having to jump around from trauma to trauma to trauma is not living anymore. It's just surviving, and we don't want to just survive here. That's the ultimate reason why we have Sugaberry. It's to thrive and to spread joy. And I think the joy that we're trying to commit to women, especially Black women, is that change, is that revolutionary act. And so that's what I see us giving back to the women. And when I see, even for the sugar, and we read these messages that are left, it's, wow, I feel like this conversation has wrapped me in velvet. I feel like I'm in a blanket, and this is why we do what we do, right? Because every day we can't turn on the news and be trauma filled and hear the stats and, wow, I'm I'm a woman who my career is going to take a step back. I don't have childcare, And it's like, okay, who stands in the gap, between trauma and trauma? And so we want to be that. We want to stand in the gap for women.
Absolutely. Black. And also, thinking about the way that the world is shaped now, we're obviously on our phones 100 times more than we probably were beforehand. And there's this illusion and imagery that projects this perfect life, right? The highlight reel that we all see on Instagram. So how do we ditch this perfectionism, especially when it comes to motherhood? And how do you guys handle, it for your own selves? Like when everything goes wrong and there's like craziness everywhere, and like, how do you share that vulnerability, and why do you think it's important to share that vulnerability?
We've been it's interesting on the sugar. If anyone's listened, Tika and I were having a conversation, I think 2 weeks ago, and we were like, oh my God, all of our business is out there. Everything about our relationships and our kids. But I think the reason why that's important is, the term we use often is letting each other off the hook. And so that's a big part of all of this, because to your point, and especially for Black women, where the strong Black woman archetype can be so damaging to our community. And it's not that Black women aren't strong, right? Like I always say, we're the spine of civilization. So, however, we wanted to reposition, our how we view ourselves as vessels of care, right, to be poured into, and not just sort of objects of service to everyone around us, whether that's in a familial setting or in a corporate setting. And so I think what the pandemic has actually forced is the collision of these two worlds, right, and kind of the deconstruction of a lot of these archetypes. Because how many times for any woman with kids or with family, do you have a kid crashing into a Zoom, or, where all of a sudden you have to look at people as fully informed humans that have these ecosystems around them that they're supporting. So you think differently about someone who shows up for work, because you literally know now you can hear their children, their partners, life happening in the background. And so I think that's been important. And I hope that's a trend that we don't revert back to, right? Because for a while, there were such basic things, like we all try to put out our most polished selves. And I remember breaking down before Zoom one morning, because I hadn't had my hair done in during the pandemic, 2 months. And I was like, Tika, if I don't get my hair done, this is going to be a real issue. And she was like, I understand, you can get off the call. But I mean, life happens. It is what it is, right?
It's so true. It's so true. And let's talk a little bit about motherhood and business. So has motherhood informed who you are as business owners? Have you seen that sort of effect? And how has being a mom changed your priorities in both your life and your career?
Yeah, I think, it's so weird because I always say, motherhood, I have two reasonings about motherhood. It's like, I'm not just a mother. I think sometimes it's like baby attached to nipple all the time. And it's like, no, I'm my own person as well. But on the other hand, my responsibilities to my child and leaving this world behind, and what am I doing and what am I leaving her and what is her legacy going to be like? And not only that, but how I am in the world and how she sees me and how she will be in the world and what she will feel as joy and freedom. I basically am her answer to that. I'm showing her. So I think they work hand in hand, and I think they feed each other. While that is true, on the other hand, I have my own wants and loves in life and things that I need to do on my own, like take time for myself. And Ella also knows that, I've gone and dipped into a hotel by myself, and she's like, oh, you're going again? Okay. Girl, I'm teaching you self-care. And so I think it's just, I think they feed each other, obviously, but I think sometimes with motherhood, it can feel like that's all that defines us is the child. And we are also on the other side of that, our own person. So I just want to, trying to kind of fuse those two ideas together might be a little confusing to people, but that's how I see things.
I think that's modern motherhood. And I think it's so important. And I think especially as women, there's been this narrative for so long that, we're the primary caretaker and we're the one that has to do all these different things. And even in, job interviews and things like that, I don't have kids, but anytime I'm in a bigger meeting with someone, they're always like, well, when are you having kids? Because it's like they know it's going to disrupt the business. And it's just an assumption. It's so crazy to me. And I'm like, do you ask men that when you're meeting?
Right. It's such a ridiculous.
Or as if it's going to hold you back from doing what you're supposed to do. I have to tell you, when I had Ella, and I was still a student, I worked pretty quickly afterward. I just took her with me, and, gratefully I had my mom, but I was like, this is not going to disrupt. And somehow it's like oh my God, is it a problem? And it's like, no, I think what this pandemic is showing you is, no, you work it out. And I think what Ty said is, oh, you see a head pop in. It makes it all kind of, again, the connective tissue, oh, we are really all in this, no matter where you are in the level of business that you're on, Yeah. So maybe it'll give more empathy when people are like, I'm coming, I'm running late, or my child, you're like, oh yeah, the girl who always popped in. Yeah, okay.
It's true. It has humanized the entire experience. So, okay, you guys are new founders during a pandemic. So, what is the best advice you've received in your role as a new entrepreneur? And what advice would you give a new founder today?
Woo! Make sure you love what you do, child. Love what you do, because this is not a sprint. It's a marathon for sure. Yeah, go ahead, Ty.
No, it's interesting because we heard through our process when we lay out our big vision often that, this is too ambitious, or you're trying to do too much. And we really resisted that notion all the time. But I will say, both in business and in personal life, one of the mantras that I've adapted is that you can do it all, right? You just can't do it all at once. And that's true. And so sometimes, we find ourselves right now as we go through strategic planning for the year ahead, really thinking about, this sort of ruthless prioritization on what's the maximum point of impact, and to scale from there. And that doesn't mean that if there are, 5 amazing things that we wanted to do next year, that because we're doubling down on one, that the other 4 won't get done. But, success breeds success. And so we don't want to take on more at any one time that we can't do well. And whether in personal or professional lives, and particularly when starting and scaling a business, especially like Tika said, it's a marathon. So all of those ideas are available to you to bring down and to execute, but it's like, one bite at a time.
Ruthless prioritization. Trademark that immediately. I'm going to be using that in a meeting later today. Obsessed. Awesome. So we're going to finish with some rapid fire sentence finishers. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. Ty, to be successful, you need to be
flexible.
Absolutely. Tika, I swap perfectionism for
I swap perfectionism for ruthless self-care.
Ruthless. Also put that on a t-shirt, please.
I like that.
Yeah. The most rewarding part about being a business owner is, Ty?
It's like, it's not like having a baby, but it really is bringing something that wasn't to life, right? Creating is a powerful and addictive life force. And so for all of the setbacks, like being able to think something and then make it so is one of just like the greatest powers of humanity. And so there's nothing like, applying that to a business.
I love that. That's so true. Tika, I turn bad days around by.
Oh, Jesus. I turn bad days around by drinking wine and calling Ty.
Honestly, I feel like that's a good solution. Ty, the mantra I repeat when things go wrong is.
It's a tried and true one. Don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff, right? At the end of the day, you just got to be like, am I healthy? Am I housed? Am I whole? Like, keep it moving. And if you choose wrong, you can always choose again, right? Sometimes we have sort of like decision paralysis. I can, as someone who suffers from anxiety. And so sometimes you just got to do it, and so half of it you're going to get wrong, and then you just do something else.
Keep it moving. So true. And this is for both of you. The parenting advice I always give to new moms.
Girl, it's going to be okay. The baby, it's going to happen no matter what you have or you don't have. The baby going to grow.
I don't give parenting advice because I feel like if you do, someone thinks you're like an expert parent. So I'm just like, I've never been, even I could do something that works for him, but I've never been a mom to your child. So like Tika said, it'll be okay.
Yeah. It's going to be okay. Seriously, you got to tell yourself that every day.
I love it. Well, thank you ladies so much. This is so awesome. Can you tell us where we can find more information on Sugaberry?
Sure. On Instagram, it's the Sugaberries. That's our community. And then you can go to our site at sugaberry.com. And you can also find us on Facebook at Sugaberry. And you can find me on Instagram at Tika Sumpter. And I'm on Twitter at I am Tika Sumpter.
And you can find me on all social platforms at Ty Randolph. Also, our podcast, The Sugar, that's The Sugar, SUGA, any place where podcasts are streamed, Apple, Spotify, all those places.
We can't wait to see what you guys do next. So excited for the products and so much more. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Jaclyn. Have a great one.